The first phase of a project, getting started. Lots of discussion, and I tend to think that discussion in the first phase is really critical. It's very important. And by the way, you don't need to write anything. I think you have this somewhere in your, I'm not sure what, I think you have it there, but it doesn't look exactly like this. But don't think that you have to write this down because it looks a bit different. It's there at the very end in your, okay, it's there. Good. One of the representations of project work in the handout you have is a story of a project, and you'll notice that that story, which is a one-page story, has no content. It could be a project about cows, it could be about birds, it could be about trucks. There's nothing to tell you because it's about how the story progresses, and if you're doing project work, you should be able to fit your topic content into that story as you tell the story of your project. But it's an example of how project work can emerge as a story when it's complete. The other thing you have is that chart, which I think is just a different way of looking at the same thing. What is discussed in the first phase of a project? It's the children's experiences primarily. It's their first-hand experience of the topic. And different children will have different stories to tell, and they'll not only tell about their own personal experience from memory, they'll tell about their parents, or their grandparents, or friends of the family, or aunts or uncles. They tell about family members' experience as well. Sometimes they don't always get it right. That doesn't matter. It's all storytelling. And what is interesting is if the children appear not to be understanding the story very well, that's an opportunity for you to assess that and think about what might be useful questions for those children to ask, and you hope that, and you'll help those questions to emerge in the first phase of a project so that they'll be able to find out the information that will make life clearer for them. The way you learn about how much children know through their experiences is to invite children to say more. When you ask them for an additional sentence or some additional information, you can tell whether they have that information or not. And I think knowledge is about how we understand our experience. It's not a simple retelling of the experience. You could have the experience of getting a bus from A to B, and you don't need to know anything about the transit system. You just need to know where to stand at what time in one place and which number bus is going to the other place. But if you really understand how buses work, you'd understand about the driver's schedule and when he has breaks and how many drivers there are and how many buses there are, and you learn about the bus barn and how the buses get kept clean and things that you don't need to use it. So the same is true of children who tell you, I go to the grocery store every week, but you don't know if it's with a parent who has time to explain things to them, or if it's a family outing on a Saturday morning, or if it's a single mother who's just wanting to get home and have quality time over the dinner table with her children. So you really don't know the circumstances, even though two children may tell similar stories. So there's more for you to find out there. Not heavily, just gently over time. So that's why I would like you to think of the experience that children have as separate from the knowledge they have. So while you do want to know in the first phase what children already know about the topic, you can best find that out by offering opportunities for them to tell stories. They can tell them orally in the whole group time, although you don't want too many at once because it means that the other children have to be listening. Or, and you don't, but there are other things they can do besides the oral storytelling, which they could do every day for maybe a week or two until many stories have been shared. Children can also draw. They can draw pictures from memory that show what experiences they've had, and the drawings become opportunities for discussion as well. So I hear people sometimes talking about this KW stuff, like what do they know, what do they want to know? They don't understand the word know, so while we are after knowledge, it's no good saying to a group of children, what do you know about? The young children don't use the word know very much. It's an abstract term. But if you tell a story from your experience, an ordinary story that they could relate to, they'll be wanting to tell you their stories too. Storytelling is infectious. You tell a good story, they tell stories. If you want the discussion topic to take a different turn because they're all telling similar stories, you just tell a different story yourself, and pretty soon they're off in another direction. So, and the knowledge, as I say, is how well you can explain your stories. Wondering is my W rather than wanting to know. It's more about what are they curious about? What are they interested in? What would they like to know more about if the stories were longer? So wondering is something that you can model also for children. You would say, I wonder what happened next. And you can ask a child what happened next in a story they've already told. But if they don't know what happened next or who did what to whom next, then you can wonder about that and encourage them to wonder too. And wonderings are most usefully expressed as questions. And again, it's no use saying to a group of children, well, you look really interested in that. What questions do you have? They don't really know the word question. They're good at it. They can ask questions till the cows come home from 2 years old onwards. Although in school contexts, they tend not to ask questions because unfortunately, they've figured out that the culture of a classroom, it's usually the teacher who asks the questions. So I think you have to be very careful how you set the culture of your classroom so that the questions can emerge more easily from the children, from their wonderings, with your help. And you can help them to frame the question. You can say now, so your question would be, and then you give them the question wording, and then if the child looks as though that doesn't make sense to them, then you have to go back and try again and to understand where it is what it is they want to know. Sometimes you can say something like, what would you like the man to talk about when he comes with the dog to show us his dog? What would you like him to talk about? And then you get into that kind of discussion, and the questions can emerge from that. But you help the children to word the questions. So EKWQ is like me fighting back with KWL, and if you don't know about KWL, you're a lucky person, and don't bother about the EKWQ either, because all you need to remember is this sequence. You learn about the children's experience through their stories, you discuss it with them, you find out what they know and what they're not sure about and what they've perhaps got misconceptions about. And you don't set them straight right there, you hold those for the second phase, so that the questions that they ask the experts will be really memorable and they'll be really able to take on the new information. So I won't spend so long on everything as I do on that one, but I really think that if you don't get that early part right, that a lot of the energy that could go into the project work and the interest that can build doesn't do so. If you get the KW over in 1 or 2 discussions, you've lost all this opportunity for children to tell stories over a week or 2 weeks, during which time you can be a good ethnographer as a teacher, learning how these young children are thinking about the topic. And that's very important for you as you move into the later phases of the project. Do it slowly, gradually. But by the end of the first phase, which may be 1, 2, or 3 weeks long, just the first phase, there will be a foundational level of understanding that all the children share. That's the goal. That plus you knowing who the experts are and and so on. Golly, you're all cold out there, aren't you? Well, I'm in the hot seat. I'm cold too, but. Making a list of questions. We talked about that earlier. Until you have a list of questions that have emerged from your discussions with the children, it's not a good idea to move on to the second phase of the project. So this is like when you have a sufficiently useful list of questions, move into the next phase, which involves, first of all, field work and then inviting experts to the classroom.